All right, hey there, I'm Chief Meteorologist Jason Smith from Fox 10 News as we get into some unique forecasting things about the Gulf Coast as we head into the spring. Gulf water temperatures have a huge impact on our weather pattern in our area, and it's kind of a microclimate thing that is unique to our part of the Gulf Coast. And so in this edition of Next Weather, I'm going to break down how that water temperature affects our forecast positively and negatively. One of the things is a lot of people run to the beach as soon as we get some sunny weather, and the problem is it's still chilly down at the beach, but the inland areas can be quite warm. We see like a 10-degree difference, and so I want to explain how that works and why that's a big part of the way weather happens across our part of the Gulf Coast. So let's take a look at the first graphic I have here, and what it's talking about here is that these cooler Gulf waters, how it impacts our weather. You have a cooler daytime high temperature in the afternoon near the coast. At night, it really doesn't affect things much, but in the daytime, certainly can have a big impact on our weather. And our daytime highs could be about 10 degrees cooler near the coast than they are in the inland areas. We can be at like 70 for Dolphin Island, Fort Morgan, Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, Pensacola Beach, Destin, and we can be at like 80 north of Mobile and up to Citronelle and Bay Minette and up in the northern parts of the Panhandle. Like, for example, we've even seen it where places like Destin could be at 69 degrees and Crestview can be at 80 during the daytime. Also, with this going on, the difference in the temperature creates a sea breeze circulation, and we typically have a southerly wind with high pressure to our east in the spring, and then it's accelerated by the difference in the temperature between the water and the land, so we have an enhanced sea breeze and it can get gusty in the afternoon. We also can see low clouds and fog developing near the coast as you have cooler nearshore water. So I'm going to break down some of these variables. First, let's talk about water temperatures. And so this is a contour map here. And water temperatures right offshore are around 65, 66 degrees. You can see the green in there. That's going to be chilly water. Then you go further offshore where you see the red. Those water temperatures there are much, much higher, and they can be up into the 70s. Look at this down in the central Gulf, 10 degrees warmer. So you have a big difference in water temperature with distance. The further offshore you go, the warmer the water is. The closer you are to the coast, the cooler the water is because of the fronts from the winter have cooled the water down, and the water doesn't warm up in a day. It takes a long time for water temperatures to rise. They start getting up into the 70-degree range, usually around the 1st of April. So we usually have a long way to go to get the water temperatures out of the 60s. And when you have the warmer water offshore and then you have cooler water near the shore, the warm, moist air from the middle Gulf moves over the cooler water, and that can result in fog. I also want to take a look at what happens with temperatures, and this is a good example. If you look at the daytime highs across the area, look at Destin at 71, but Crestview at 78. This is a good example of how things can happen in the springtime there. Pensacola at 70, but 77 in Mobile, 78 in Evergreen. So typically a lot colder or cooler near the water. Winds, if we look at the afternoon winds, look at how it's breezier generally near the coast. Gulf Shores a 16-mile-per-hour wind. Crestview 15, Mobile 15, then you move inland and the wind's hardly blowing in Milton, hardly blowing in Molina. Of course, you can see exceptions to this, but you will get gustier winds. If you look at the Mississippi side, Pascagoula 12 miles an hour, but only a 4-mile-per-hour breeze in Lucedale, for example, and this is that enhanced sea breeze going on in the afternoon. All right, so we talk about advection fog, and this is a classic example of this. This is off of Dolphin Island, and this is actually looking north towards the intercoastal waterways, which is the water that it kind of connects Mobile Bay and Mississippi Sound, and the water's deeper in the intercoastal. All that water in the foreground where there's no fog is shallower. The shallow water can warm up quickly, but the deeper water stays colder, and you can see how the fog is actually forming up over the cooler waters of the intercoastal. This is a good example of how that advection fog works. You get the chilly water temperatures and of the nearshore waters, and it can create fog. And this is a really clear shot of it. I've got another one here in that headlines graphic I showed you at the very beginning, which is this graphic right here. I could actually bring it back before the animation here, and you can see how the fog is rolling in off the beach there at the Gulf as we get low clouds and fog. That's another one of the things that can happen. The other thing that can happen too that works to our advantage with this cooler nearshore waters is that the spring is severe weather season for the Gulf Coast, and we can see some really dynamic storm systems in February, March, and April. But near the coast, typically the tornadoes are not as strong in February, March, and April because the Gulf water temperatures are colder, and that limits instability a little bit. So the Gulf actually helps us a little to keep our severe weather season from being as intense as it is up in central and northern Alabama, central and northern Mississippi. We have a little bit more of a stabilizing impact from the Gulf that helps us to keep severe weather somewhat limited. We can still see severe weather here. I'm not saying we're not going to get tornadoes here, but that's another factor. So summing it up, the cooler water temperatures, typically late winter and early spring, makes our daytime highs cooler near the coast. It can enhance the sea breeze in the afternoon, and it can produce this really stubborn low cloud cover and fog, which can be frustrating for folks that want to go to the beach for spring break. Another problem with the enhanced sea breeze is it accelerates the rip current risk and can make rip currents more dangerous in the late winter and in the early spring. But one of the positives of this is that it will limit severe weather potential a little near the coast at times, limiting instability. So that is a positive thing. So there's positive and negatives, and this really does help in April and May as it starts to get a little bit too hot. We've got a nice refreshing sea breeze that comes in and keeps it from being as hot. So there are a lot of things that are going on with the Gulf water temperatures that influence the climate across the Gulf Coast.